Okay, now I'm hitting live. Hi everyone, hopefully you can hear us and see us and all of that other stuff. We'll be starting in just a minute. We are starting 30 minutes earlier than usual today because Dan has to go somewhere. Dan has a life.
Where I go? Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I'm going out to a party. No, trust me. If I explained where I was going, you would all not want to trade places with me.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sending out the tweet.
I'll retweet that.
Yep.
So much to talk about.
All right, you ready to start?
Yep, I am now recording.
I'm now recording too. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 215 for March 5th, 2021. Hey everyone, Danny Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we talk about all things Microsoft, Surface, Xbox, Windows, and tech in general. And we've had quite a busy week this week, so we got a lot of stories to go through. Not all massive stories. We're going to try to keep this one under 90 minutes. But there was a lot going on, including Microsoft Ignite, which we'll do a quick roundup. And while that's not a necessarily consumer-facing event, there were some big stories that came out of there, including Microsoft Mesh and holoportation, which is always fun to say. Zach will take us through some Windows 10 insider news, as well as what Panos Panay was talking about when he spoke about the next gen of Windows, also at Ignite. Another story that got around was the Lumia photo lead back in the day from Nokia is back at Microsoft. So that's an interesting story. We'll kind of go through that and what that all means. Alexa app for Xbox is on the cusp of being released. It's been spotted in the store. You can actually download it, but it's not actually enabled yet. So we'll just kind of go through that. I did a little story at the beginning of the week talking about GroupMe. So for years, Zach and I have been talking on this podcast about how GroupMe, which is owned by Skype, which is then owned by Microsoft, would be a really great, I don't know, candidate against WhatsApp and Telegram. And it looks like they're finally coming around to that idea. Of course, typical Microsoft, it's a couple years late. They took, take advice years ago. This would have been a little bit more exciting, but still, it's a good move. I think they have potential here. So we'll go through GroupMe. And if you've never heard of GroupMe or think no one uses it, we'll kind of go through that as well. Jez Corden, our games editor, did an editorial this week about the Xbox achievements needing an overhaul. So we'll kind of go through that, and Zach will share some of his thoughts about that too. Razer announced their new Anzu smart glasses. I'm very excited about this. Even if you're not interested in these particular ones, I think as a smart wearable category, I think this is going to be the next thing you're going to start to see. We'll go through why these are cool, why this category is interesting, and yes, I will be getting them in to review, so don't worry if you're worried about spending money. I'll talk about how they're different from Amazon's Echo glasses, which a lot of people are making the comparisons to. And then there's also Microsoft is unifying the code base for Microsoft Edge's mobile apps, which is kind of a technical story, but helps explain why there are some differences between the desktop version and the mobile version, besides the obvious. Ooh, that was a lot. Are we done with the podcast yet? Because I feel like that was a lot of stuff to go through. Zach's not listening. He's reading comments or something.
Sorry, I'm just catching up on that Edge story.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. And plus, I guess we'll do the thing of the week, although I had the thing of the week in my head at the beginning of the week, and I forgot to write it down, and I really should have, and now I forgot what it was. So I don't know if I'll have one. We'll see in the next 60 to 90 minutes if I think of it. Zach maybe he's probably in the same boat as me. But Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm good. How are you? It was a busy week this week for me.
Yeah, it's been a little chaotic, lots of small news stories. It's also March now, which is nice. We're turning the tide here in the United States. The sun is lasting longer, which is nice. And, we're getting more of our pandemic COVID shots, which is cool. So, it's spring. I think we're all due for spring, and hopefully we can get outside soon. So that should be good. Although being in the Northeast, we'll probably get one more snowstorm. That's usually how it works.
Just to say goodbye.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden we get like 15 inches of snow and then it melts like a few days later. But anyway, let's get right to the news here. So Microsoft Ignite, Zach, you covered a lot of this. I kind of stayed away from it a bit this week because, well, it's not that exciting. But tell us what we need to know, kind of what was the big news.
Yeah, so as per is normally the case with Ignite, lots of IT Pro announcements. Nothing's really specific to Windows, although we will talk a bit about some of the hints that Panos made at his sort of fireside chat thing he had. But the main sort of announcements that I think our audience would be mostly interested in are the ones to do with Microsoft Teams and Outlook and the sort of productivity platform that Microsoft has. So to begin, let's talk a little bit about Outlook. So Microsoft announced a couple of new features coming to Outlook Web and Outlook Mobile. The new feature coming to Outlook Web is this brand new board, like freeform board view in the calendar, which transforms the calendar experience with customizable vision tools for organizing and managing calendars, files, reminders, and to-do lists. So instead of the traditional sort of grid view that you get in a calendar, this will be like as mentioned, a freeform board that you can drag things around. And I guess it's a new way of using your calendar. This will be rolling out soon. Outlook Mobile is also getting an AI feature called Suggested Times that will analyze your email and automatically suggest times that are free on your calendar, as well as the recipients of the email thread, so that you can organize meetings and not have it clash with anything. So that's kind of nice. They're just sort of small features that are just going to enhance your workflow in Outlook, which is super cool. They also announced, let's see here, Microsoft Teams getting brand new security, privacy, and compliance features. End-to-end encryption for one-on-one meetings. This is a big deal for enterprises using Microsoft Teams, and when they're talking about sensitive data, whether that be corporate data or just simply transferring passwords across two different people, instead of doing that in an unsecure environment, this is now something they can do one-to-one in an encrypted conversation as well. Invite-only meeting controls, which I'm surprised wasn't already there, but this is coming later this month, and it enables Teams users to ensure that only intended participants are allowed to join a meeting. And then also the ability to disable video is coming in the first half of this year. So what this will allow you to do, I don't know if you've seen these videos, Dan, but when Zoom took off, there were a lot of these prank videos where people were joining random Zoom calls and doing stupid things on camera, and the teachers of these virtual classrooms, could do nothing to stop them, really. Now, Teams is getting a feature that can disable individual people's cameras as the, leader or the host of the meeting. So if you're a teacher holding a virtual class, you have power to turn off students' cameras if you need to do it, if they're being a nuisance. So that's super cool in Teams. Then let's see what else there was real quick. There's a new Universal Print service. This was announced, I think, last year, but Universal Print essentially is printers in the cloud. And you can, and it allows customers to print from Windows devices to Azure Active Directory printers. And you can also print from your OneDrive for Business account straight to these printers as well. So this is definitely not a consumer feature. This is all for businesses and whatnot. But that's kind of what Ignite's all about. And I think those are the top announcements for us. There was also the whole Microsoft Mesh thing, of course.
Yeah, well, and also Flutter. Did you talk about Flutter?
I did not talk about Flutter. I did not really follow that story.
Flutter. Can you say flutter with a British accent?
Flutter.
There you go. Oh, that's great. Yeah, so it's Google Flutter. So
why is
this
Google
was
making an announcement at Ignite?
I know, it's weird. So Google has a kind of cross-platform UWP-ish / PWA, like framework for making apps. And this is a way for developers to make basically low cost, low effort apps, which is something the Microsoft Store is very familiar with. Yeah. But these are sort of important for bootstrapping PWAs and stuff into stores. So this is a Google initiative, but it is cross-platform. So it works, I believe, on Mac OS, iOS, Android, and Windows. And they kind of announced an alpha version in the fall, I believe it was. I forgot when it was exactly. I did the article on it. And now they're announcing basically a 2.0, so it's entering a next stage. What's interesting about this is these aren't like I said, these high quality, type apps, but they are important for the ecosystem, and at least that's what Google is banking on. Yeah. But they did add some dual screen Android support with the cooperation of Microsoft, which means if a developer wanted to make these, they could, and it would work on Surface Duo, because as Microsoft has been saying, and what Google, agrees with, is this idea of dual screen and foldable displays is kind of going to be the future for a lot of mobile Android devices. And so, a lot of people see Duo as just a Microsoft thing, but it's really the reason they do the Android the way it is so that other companies can emulate that. So that's what this is kind of an extension of. So it's kind of neat, for developers to kind of get in on this stuff. We'll wait and see, of course. When I did the 3-month re-review of the Surface Duo, I pointed out how really the app story has been kind of missing. We haven't really seen any momentum, not even with Google's own official apps. I did make the kind of comment about how, Google Maps for a while did seem to have like dual screen support, but it turns out it was like some weird bug. It's a bug that they should actually bring back because it was actually kind of nice, but it actually did make using maps on dual screens kind of nice. I'm real curious what Google's plans are for its official apps, because we said this before on Surface Duo, you don't need a ton of apps that actually span and leverage both displays. The real benefit to Surface Duo is just running 2 separate apps side by side and multitasking. That's how most of us are getting the benefit from it. That said, once in a while, when you want to get immersed into an app, it is nice to be able to span screens. Like in Outlook, it's really good when you just want to triage your emails. You just want to go through in the morning the next 20 to 50 emails, span them to both screens, a lot easier. So Gmail would be a good candidate for that. Google Maps would be kind of cool too if you're like browsing for places, because you can have the search window on the left side and the actual map on the right side. So there are design cues here that could be done, but so far nothing. So maybe
TikTok,
Android 11. Yeah, TikTok. Yeah, that's an odd one. But we'll see with the Android 11 getting pushed out a little bit more. Then of course Android 12 is already being tested now. So
I guess Duo will get that in 2 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, though, and I love doing this to people when I ask, like people complaining, like, "Oh, where's Android 11?" or "What about Android 12?" I'm like, "What feature in Android 12 are you really looking forward to?" And most people are like, their faces go blank, because there aren't these days. There are not a ton of features being added to smartphones that are like must have.
Every new version of Android does something new with the notification system. Like it's like Android can't figure out notifications. Every single version has something new with notifications. I think Android 11 they separate conversation notifications with everything else.
And they're translucent.
And it's maybe, I don't know. But then I think Android 12's taking that further, and they're making it more privacy focused and whatnot. And it's like, cool, yeah. And I guess these are essentially productivity features, right? Like Microsoft could take advantage of these new notification enhancements with Android 11 and 12. But I think what most people are waiting for when they say, where's Android 11 for Duo, is fixes and more native support with the operating system and the dual screen setup. Because I don't know where this rumor came or this idea came from, but the idea is Android 11 apparently has better support for dual screen devices than Android 10 does. A lot of the support in Android 10 is Microsoft's own code, and I'm assuming with Android 11 that's actually going to move over to native Android code, and as a result may work better. But again, we don't know. We haven't got it yet, so until that happens, this is all just speculation.
Right. And regardless of what Android does with notifications, they are and always will be way better than what is on iOS.
True.
So those notifications are still complete garbage, even on iOS 14. I absolutely hate notifications on iOS. Anyway, moving on.
Wait, real quick. Mesh. Before you get to the Mesh thing, there is a couple more things, just general Ignite announcements that I just want to briefly talk about. Microsoft announced new intelligent speakers for Teams. So these are essentially little like sort of Amazon Echo Puck-like devices, but running Microsoft Teams. And they can, if you cast your minds back to, I want to say 2017, do you remember that demo that Microsoft did with Cortana, where they had like this dedicated sort of cone-shaped speaker, and it was analyzing all the people in the room, it was transcribing everything they were saying, and identifying that person and putting an ID, a face of that person, on the Surface Hub that was behind them. That technology has shrunken down and will be available in these sort of hand-sized puck-like speakers that sit in meeting rooms and stuff later this year, I believe. It's going into preview later this year. So yes, the new speakers can monitor up to 10 different people in one meeting room and correctly identify and transcribe their conversations so that meeting participants not in the room can follow along. So this was one of the demos they did back in 2017 as well. There was, I think, 3 people in the meeting room, but then there was like 5 people connected via Microsoft Teams elsewhere in their building or around the world, and they could have a live transcription of the conversations and the meetings that were going on, which is fantastic. The speakers include a 7-array microphone that uses AI to identify and differentiate between the different voices while matching specific voices to people's profiles in Teams. And of course, enterprises can customize the level of privacy and security as well, turning off the ability to transcribe or match transcriptions to specific people if necessary. So it's good to see that technology actually showing up somewhere, because it was supposed to be like a Cortana thing, and then obviously Cortana died basically, but this technology has survived and will be shipping in these intelligent speakers that will be powered by Microsoft Teams. So that's super cool.
Is, for all intents and purposes, still Cortana.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the technology is the same. It just doesn't have a sassy personality anymore. Yeah.
Right. And to be fair, like Google does this in Hangouts. There's a button where you can put live transcription on. So this is really neat stuff. Someone who studied language years ago, this idea of like live transcription and translation is just really fascinating, because language is, while super important, is also a huge barrier, especially in the new global world where, like someone mentioned in our chat here, they're from Iraq, right? So like people are tuning in, conversing all around the world, this ability to, not only like translate and transcribe, but as you point out, know who is saying what.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have just like a transcription of the chat and there's 10 people in there, and just you don't know who's saying anything, but to have it, ID'd with a specific person is really fascinating. And if I recall this technology, they're also working on a version to do what's called gisting, which is you can have a 60-minute meeting, but no one wants to necessarily want to read a 60-minute transcription.
Yeah.
But they're using AI to just basically get the gist of it, which is to summarize the important things, including the dates and the key takeaways, which is really where AI for me is going to be really useful.
I've seen this already on Reddit. There's bots on Reddit you can find that will, when someone links an article on Reddit, sometimes you'll see it in the comments, a user will at a bot or mention a bot, and the bot will reply with a gist of the article that was linked, and it'll be like, this article says this and this, here's the main bullet points, and then just like a tiny bit signing off. And it can be like a 500 to 1,000 word article and puts it into 3 paragraphs, and it's really great because it gists the article and makes it small and quick to read, and that's good. And I think it also could be bad, because obviously that leads to missing information sometimes. Like bots, AI is not perfect, and it probably never will be, and it can miss some important information sometimes, but that's why you always should double check these things, especially if it's an important story or an important meeting, in the case of a Microsoft Teams meeting, because otherwise you may be misinformed in some cases, and that's not always great.
Little humble brag here. Long time ago in my other life, I did a project with the Center for Advanced Studies in Language, which was part of the Department of Defense. And we were looking at translators working in Iraq and the Middle East who would intercept messages, and it was the translator's job to translate that and then summarize it and pass it on to the intelligence agencies. And we were tasked with understanding how fatigue can impact accuracy of the translation and the gisting of it. So even though like AI is still got a long way to go into, what you're talking about with accuracy of the thing, humans are also not perfect at it either.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of biases that go into what's important in single words and all this kind of stuff. So really interesting technology that, these are the subtle things that I think it's going to make a big difference. I mean, I think we take it for granted, even on like Twitter. Like I see tweets sometimes in foreign languages, and I just click on it and hit translate tweet, and and instantly translates. And it's pretty good. I actually generally understand what the person is saying.
Yeah.
It's also taken the wind out of some trolls who try to say something to you in another language, and you're like, no, I understand what you said, and respond back. called him a jerk. So this technology, I think, is going to be really fascinating. Real-time translation, I think, is going to be the big one.
Yeah,
But
having that tech in like an earpiece one day will be like the real thing. I think they've already demoed stuff like that. Maybe not Microsoft, but I've definitely seen demos of stuff like that, and it would be cool to have that in a consumer product one day.
I can't get to the internet right now.
Thank you, Cortana.
Gosh,
Yeah, I've got it plugged in only because I want it to catch the Bluetooth update that would basically kill it and turn it into a Bluetooth speaker. And it's only available between January and July, and because once after July they're not going to offer the update no more. So I have it plugged in just in case when the update comes out it grabs it. Although it's saying it can't connect to the internet, so I might need to check on that. Real quick, one final thing I want to talk about from Ignite. Microsoft re-announced, sort of, because this was announced last year, that Teams now supports up to 20,000 attendees in a broadcast-only, I guess, session. But that will only be until the end of the year. 20,000 isn't the actual officially supported number. That's just because we're in a pandemic and most people are working from home. And this is for huge corporations with, of course, thousands of employees, where they need to do town halls or whatnot to inform everybody who works at the company what's going on, their quarterly earnings, etc., etc. But that's only to the end of the year. Out in 2022, that limit will go back to 10,000 people, which is still a huge number, but it's certainly not 20,000 people. But I think Microsoft is sort of anticipating that a lot of people will eventually return to work this year, like actual going into offices, and therefore may not necessarily need to use Teams for these sort of town halls based sessions. Elsewhere, they were just also reminding us, again, this was all announced last year. Microsoft is very good at re-announcing stuff that's already been announced, but they don't tell you it's a re-announcement. So you have to double check what you're writing that is new. But they're re-announcing that you can also do interactive webinars up to 1,000 attendees, which is quite impressive. I think that means that people in the webinar can talk to you with a video camera and stuff, whereas the broadcasts are one way. You don't get to talk back, because obviously that'd be crazy if you had 20,000 people, all of their cameras on, all trying to talk to the to the host at once. But yes, that's basically all of the most interesting Ignite stuff. Now Microsoft Mesh, which is crazy.
So Microsoft Mesh. So going back to 2016, I want to say. Yeah, it was 2016, where this was back when HoloLens was announced in 2015. And during that first year, actually first 2 years, I would say, maybe even a little bit longer, but definitely the first 2 years, the mission plan for HoloLens was not clearly defined, which is when you go back to the original announcement, you see them using it on Mars with NASA to explore the planet. I remember doing that demo. They also showed Minecraft, so you can play video games in it. And then they also did it with Skype, and someone can walk you through fixing something remotely. And so they had all these sort of ideas, but they weren't completely sure how to position HoloLens. And that was part of the reason why getting it out there. Since then, its mission has become more clearly defined. We're seeing it used now in actual surgeries around the world. That's growing. We're seeing it used in education markets, and we're seeing it used on factory floors and engineers and manufacturers. When people talk about Apple and their potential for AR, which, don't get me wrong, I think Apple has a great plan, but there's only one company today that is actually making money on mixed reality. And it's actually a reality, and that's Microsoft. And I think that's really important. HoloLens is selling very well, and it's actually being used by surgeons, for instance. You can't say that about any other AR mixed reality technology. And they have a really good lead. And it's not just about the hardware. I know we all like to fixate on the HoloLens hardware, which is impressive. But what Microsoft is really working on is building up the ecosystem, the groundwork on the software to make it useful. Zach and I both have a Gen 1 HoloLens, and we've said it over and over again. If we sent it to you, you would play with it for about 20 minutes, think it's awesome, and you put it down, and you probably wouldn't use it again, because there's not a ton for regular people to do in it yet. It's good for very specific software and instances. Leading up to that is Microsoft Mesh. So back in 2016 or 17, they showed what they called holoportation, this idea of using, and you needed 3D cameras to scan you into a system, but then it would scan you and project you using a person's HoloLens. So you can have sort of remote meetings, but the person would be there kind of quote unquote physically in the room with you. much like what we saw in like Star Trek and any other sci-fi thing where they have a hologram of a person. So they were actually working on the technology, and it was actually working. Like it wasn't just like a concept, but they then spent the next couple of years, and I think it was 2018 we saw it again, demoed, and they made progress at it. So now they're officially basically announcing it as a framework that you can go and download and start building for. And it's called Microsoft Mesh, not to be confused with Live Mesh, which if you understand what Live Mesh is, you're a really old Microsoft fan. But Microsoft Mesh is a framework that sort of it mixes mixed reality with things with Alt Space VR, which was a company that Microsoft bought. That's a consumer kind of thing where people can join in and have virtual representations of themselves via icons. And they took that and they kind of merged it with this technology. So the initial release of this doesn't, first of all, you need 3D cameras to scan you in. Right. That's not there yet, right? That can be done, but that's not practical. That I'm sure is also being worked on in terms of hardware. But at first you're doing sort of these icons that represent you, these virtual avatars. And, there's like things they can do now with monitoring your eyes and facial expressions and stuff like that using HoloLens, as well as picking up your hand movement, finger movements and stuff like that. So they demoed this technology on stage. In fact, like for the main Microsoft keynote, this was probably almost 70% of the keynote. It was a long demo of this.
Yeah.
They're teaming up with a bunch of companies to use it in like real world use cases. But this is really fascinating because this is sort of like, there is obviously the productivity aspect to this, which is, it is going to be merged with or put into with Microsoft Teams, for instance. And the idea here is that eventually we can have virtual meetings where we're kind of in the same room together. Like for instance, if Zach and I work for a company, they could be on a factory floor. We could all be virtually on this factory floor, looking around and seeing what everybody else is seeing and experiencing that same reality remotely. And as the pandemic proved, people can work like this even without the pandemic, in the sense that it saves money. People don't need an office. But two, as we work globally too, it doesn't make sense. Right now, like I feel bad, like when Panos needs to go to the factory, check out the factory for Surface, he's got to fly to China.
Yeah.
And he flies there multiple times a year, and it's a grueling trip, right? But in the future, if we do this stuff kind of remotely and through holoportation, and this stuff is still kind of far out, for consumers, obviously. But I think anyone who's seen a sci-fi movie knows this is going to happen, right? This is like the way computing is going. And this is the really interesting aspect of computing. And we're talking still 5-10 years out before this is practical. But this is kind of what we want. The idea of like Zach's in the UK, I'm here in the US, but someday I can teleport via, holograms, and him and I can hang out and experience the same reality is insane. I guess crazy, but that's kind of what
it could eventually also change the broadcast TV and I guess shows like podcasts, where two hosts in two different countries can be in the same virtual environment and essentially host a show from a virtual reality experience. Like Alt Space VR, I think already has that sort of thing built in where you can be in a room, have two people sit down, and of course it's using Alt Space VR as sort of animated characters and whatnot. But eventually, as Dan mentioned, once the idea of scanning your 3D self using, I don't know, a 3D camera or whatnot, once that becomes the norm, I guess, or something that normal people can do, then you could have these sort of virtual sets with virtual cameras and broadcast these things to people all across the world. It will be super interesting. It kind of reminds me of, there's that scene in Avengers Endgame where all the different characters are
yes,
holoporting in and chatting with each other, but they're not actually there. They disappear after 30 seconds or whatever, however long they're there. But they look real. They look like they're there, but they're not there. Yeah, exactly. Loads of movies. I'm just using that as an example. Yeah. But this has been a thing in movies for a very long time, and that is slowly but surely becoming a reality. Of course, right now we have to wear these big bulky things on our heads to actually experience it. But eventually, these might just be actual holograms that exist in your virtual space, and that would be a whole nother thing. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine one of the first steps you'll see is like in big companies like Microsoft and other places, they would literally like if you've been in a modern building that's tech oriented, it's not uncommon these days to find quiet rooms.
Yes.
They're special little tiny rooms that people can go work in. They can do teleconferencing in. They're soundproofed. Uh, they can basically, they're occupied. No one's going to walk in on you. You see sometimes at airports too.
Yeah.
But if you take that concept and then you put like a couple of these, because you only need a couple cameras as that technology improves, a couple cameras in there to do the 3D scanning. I can imagine having a room like that. You sign up for it. I need this room from 12 to 12:30. I'm doing a holo meeting. You go in there, you put your HoloLens on, they scan your body in real time, and that's how you do your meeting. Like that's going to be, I guarantee you that's going to be a thing in our lifetime. Like I said, we're still years out.
Yeah.
Eventually, I think as a consumer tech, the cameras get smaller. We'll have like people with houses will have a little section in their house where that's the hollow room. Just like you have, like my house has 3 bathrooms, which is insane. You may think I live in a mansion. I don't. It's 1,900 square feet. It's a new home. It's 2017, but you go back like 30 years and be like, I live in a house with 3 bathrooms.
Yeah.
People would be like, oh my God. Like, but now it's just normal. One of them is literally for the cat. It's cat's room. The occasional guest can go to the bathroom in there, but it's the litter box, right? Like that's
funny.
where we are. So this idea of like having a room, I have like 2 living rooms for TVs, right?
Yeah.
Like, so this idea of like this is going to happen, I think, is very, going down that road. But
in the future, we'll have a living room and we'll have a holoportation room, and that's where we go to do our HoloLens things.
Yeah, and it's like, but they're building out the groundwork. And I think, and someone asked, is this related to Wi-Fi mesh? No, it has nothing to do with that. I think mesh here is used as a term because it's literally meshing various things that they've been working on.
Yeah.
HoloLens, the hardware, which by the way, it's not limited to HoloLens. It does work on PCs, tablets, and phones.
And Oculus.
Yep. So you have the hardware aspect. You have things like Azure Anchors, which is a thing that's been working on. Azure Anchors is a way to demarcate locations in a physical reality that can be transcribed digitally so that we can all experience and know where we are in orientation in relation to an object. It's very technical, but it's important for things like even like when they demo, one of the coolest things you can do in HoloLens is the fact that it can detect like edges of a table. So you can put objects on a table and it knows. You can put a ball on the table and it'll roll off. And when it gets to the end of the table, it knows that's the end of the table. It falls off and hits the floor, right?
Yeah.
Like it does that now. Like this is part of like the anchoring and all this kind of stuff. But so that's part of it. Then you have Microsoft Teams and productivity a part of it. Then you have things like Altspace VR, which is a part of it. So you take all these components they've been working on, and then you have the programming aspect of it, and you mesh it together, and that's kind of what you got here. So
and also Microsoft had the IP for mesh, and they weren't using it.
Yes, right. Yeah. So this is neat stuff. I'm really, really into the idea of future computing, and this is one aspect, and it relies heavily on Azure because you think of it too. Getting back to the 3D scanning components. If you go and watch that was a live presentation with Alex Kipman on stage and had guests all 3D scanned, but that was happening in real time. Do you know what the processing power that's required to scan the physical person in 3D in real time?
Yeah.
Like it's only now we have the computing power to make that happen, right? That's more than a GTX or RTX 3070.
And the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned, but you could actually join the meeting, the virtual meeting. You could put on a headset or whatever, and you could actually go into Altspace VR and watch the keynote with the 3D Alex Kipman on stage, and you could walk around the place and sit next to people and whatnot. You could find your friend if you had a friend tuning in as well, which is insane. Like that was already a demo that they were doing live, and you could actually partake in it.
So if Zach's right, if you're on Altspace VR, you could go and sit. And I wish I had more time to do this stuff, because I remember there was a company that they had. I'm surprised, man. I'm dumb. I should have brought this up like, I don't know, a year ago. There was a company. I don't know the name of it, but it was in Microsoft Mixed Reality. You can do it, and they created virtual movie theaters. and you can walk around the theater, and there would start times. I remember I watched Top Gun. Like,
I remember you
you
telling me
went,
this. I don't remember what this was though.
yeah, and then you can go in the theater and you can sit down and you look around and there were other people there as avatars, and they were the real people. Like you could, it was
Yeah, yeah.
insane. And,
Are you
like,
sure it wasn't Alt Space VR?
I don't know if it was all space VR. Might have been.
It could have been
It
Alt
was
Space
definitely part
VR.
Windows Mixed Reality.
Yeah, and
Remember
yeah,
doing
I'm pretty sure Oculus has a similar thing as well, where there are like virtual environments you can go to and sit down and chat with people and whatnot.
Yeah, it was like a start time. Like you had to be there. There were trailers.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like the virtual screen was huge. It felt like you're kind of, obviously it's immersive technology, so it felt like, you were watching a giant screen, and it had really good audio too. Obviously, I forgot the name of that. If someone knows, put it into comments. Yeah, I'm surprised. Really should have done a how-to on that back in October, maybe, or even like this summer.
Yeah.
Like, geez, hopefully that company is still around. That was some neat stuff. But listen, that's gonna be kind of the future for. It's still a ways out, but
Yes.
this is nitty-gritty stuff. And so I know, like I said, people like to focus on, the technology and the hardware, but it's only as good as the stuff you can do with it, so.
And like, the HoloLens is already there, but it's very much an enterprise thing. And then we've also got VR headsets, which are already here, and consumers can buy them, although it's a very niche market right now. I think when Apple finally gets into the game with their consumer AR glasses that they're rumored to be working on, I think that's when like this really takes off and becomes a mainstream idea. But I think we're quite a ways away from that, because I think Apple's AR glasses are rumored for like 2024, 2025. And in the meantime, they're rumored to be doing a VR headset, which is kind of weird.
It really is kind of weird,
because Apple already has the AR platform. They've smartly built it into their iPhones and iPads, and are secretly building that platform off of that without announcing that they're working on an AR headset. But it's magic, because they're going to have these AR glasses launch, and they will already be compatible with a bunch of services, because it's been a thing that existed for 5 years on the development side.
Right. The only reason this stuff exists in the current Apple devices is so developers can play around with it. It's because no one is really practically using a lot of this stuff daily. I know, like,
other than Pokemon Go
stuff. Yeah, Pokemon Go and virtually measuring stuff, which you need to do like I don't know. Like, so it's neat technology. Everybody's going to be there. I think Microsoft has the better, more robust ecosystem. Meanwhile, Google is kind of absent from this. They started off with their own glasses, and they just been stumbling and tripping up on it. Then you had Magic Leap, which was kind of, didn't really live up to the hype either. So Microsoft is really sort of ahead of this. But I think there will be sort of this demarcation initially where Microsoft's technology, just like Windows, is going to be used by real people doing real work. I did the whole rant a couple of weeks ago about the Toshiba Toughbooks, or Panasonic Toughbooks. I don't know why I used to do Toshiba. Panasonic Toughbooks, how they're used by police, EMTs, military. Like, it's the real computer. They're not using Macs on the battlefield, right? And I think you only see that with this technology. Like right now, surgeons are using it, engineers are using it, people on the frontline workers on factory floors are using it. Like, military is using it, right? The military has a big contract with Microsoft for these, where they made a battle version of HoloLens. So like, that's the real world of this stuff. Meanwhile, I think Apple probably will do well for the consumer aspect of this, because I'm pretty confident, and this is where Apple's genius is that you're going to have an iPhone. That's going to be the computer component. You're going to have the watch, which will be the sort of keyboard and interface for it. And then you're going to have the glasses components. And when you combine all those things together, you're going to have a wearable computer system that's pretty powerful because of their processor. So I think they'll do well in that. That's an area where Microsoft is going to have a tough time to compete with, right? But we're getting ahead of ourselves there. So that's Microsoft Mesh. Let's move on. Lumia Photo lead joins Microsoft.
Oh, so actually, we've skipped the Panos thing.
Oh, sorry, the Windows 10 stuff. Yes, okay. Sorry, I stole Zach's thunder. Zach, go.
Yeah, so at Ignite, Panos Panay and Rowan, I think, Rowan Soanes had a fireside chat. For those who don't know, fireside chats are these sort of easy to make two execs sit down and chat for an hour or 15 minutes in the case of the one at Microsoft Ignite, just about the things being announced. It's easy marketing for a lot of their products, but the reason we're talking about it is because Panos sort of dropped a very brief yet tantalizing, I think, hint at what's coming next for Windows. Let me pull up the actual quote, which I should have done earlier. I am not prepared for this. I apologize. But essentially, he hinted at the next generation of Windows, and his wording was specifically the next generation of Windows. Now, that's a bigger deal than a lot of you might think, because that terminology suggests that there's something big in the works for Windows. Microsoft would be wise to avoid that kind of terminology if they didn't want to hype up the next Windows 10 feature update or Windows 10X, whatever. So let's see. We've got his quote here. So he talks about Windows for quite a bit. He's asked, essentially, Rowan Soanes asked him. Actually, let me set the stage for this because it won't make sense otherwise. So the one-on-one 15-minute fireside chat was presented in the style of a wired autocomplete interview. If you've never seen those, two celebrities would normally sit down in a wired interview, and instead of an interviewer asking them questions, they are given a cardboard, board, and on it is a Google search, and below it is the autocomplete suggestions, and they rip off tape, and the autocomplete is the question that they have to answer. This is a sort of take on that, except powered by Bing. So Panos and Rowan are sitting down, and they're ripping off these Bing autocomplete suggestions, and they're answering what the autocomplete is asking. Answering what the autocomplete is asking. Sorry. And the final question is to Panos. What is the question Panos gets asked the most, or something along those lines? And Rowan says, why Windows? I think that's the question you asked the most. Why Windows? Because he, of course, is newly in charge of the Windows UX and is leading that whole effort. And Panos' response is fairly long-winded, but the thing we're sort of focused on here is what he says, and I quote, "I haven't talked about the next generation of Windows and what's coming next, but I can tell you I am so pumped. We're not talking about that today because we have so much right now. We talked about the depth of features and breadth of what Windows can bring to each of you for IT pros. I know that the future of Windows is incredible, what we're bringing to the table for sure, but ultimately we're here today to talk about Windows 10 and what Windows 10 brings to the table and how it can support our customers and partners here at Ignite." So a couple of key takeaways from that quote. Obviously, of course, the next generation of Windows is a big deal that he says that rather than, the next feature update to Windows 10. But also the fact that he refers to the next generation of Windows and Windows 10 as two separate things. Now, this could just be, I don't think maybe he wasn't thinking, and that's not entirely true. Or maybe we're looking too much into this. But the way it's worded, it suggests that the next generation of Windows is not Windows 10, because he refers to Windows today as Windows 10 and the next generation of Windows as the next generation of Windows. So what could that mean? We don't know. But we do know two things. We know that Sun Valley's in the works, which is supposed to be this big update for Windows 10 coming later this year. And we also know that Windows 10X is supposed to launch at some point this year as well. Now, to me, Windows 10X is the true next generation of Windows. It's the Windows Core OS-based version of Windows built on a modern core with legacy features stripped out, much more secure, much lighter, etc., etc. It is a true next-gen version of Windows. Sun Valley, on the other hand, is more just cleaning up what exists today, making it nicer, prettier to look at, adding more features to it, and sort of bringing it, up to par with other modern operating systems on the market without, taking away a lot of what makes Windows 10 Windows 10. Windows 10 will still be legacy Windows even with this Sun Valley update coming later this year. So when Panos says next generation of Windows, I think he's referring to both of them. I think he's referring to 10X. I think he's referring to Sun Valley. Because remember, Sun Valley will be Panos Panay's first version of Windows 10 under his leadership, essentially. First real feature update, because we've had 20H2 and 21H1, but those are not real feature updates. They're essentially just cumulative updates. So this Sun Valley stuff will be his first real Windows 10 desktop release. So I'm assuming that his goal here is to sort of get people excited for Windows again, use phrasing like new Windows and next generation of Windows, and essentially market to the world that Windows is back and you should be paying attention to it. Whether that's Windows 10X or desktop, I think it's both. You're going to see OEMs marketing both 10X devices in 2022 as well as desktop PCs with Sun Valley pre-installed. And that's just how it's going to be for a while. We're going to have, most people buying these desktop PCs or, Windows desktop PCs, and 10X will be for this sort of low-end market. And slowly but surely it will climb. And then you'll start eventually seeing it on mid-tier PCs and then laptops and whatnot. And then eventually it will launch on dual-screen PCs and it will become the standard version of Windows 10. At least that's what I think Microsoft is hoping will happen. But yes, the fact that Microsoft and Panos is using phrasing like next generation of Windows implies that we're in for a big ride of Windows this year. One that we haven't really seen, I think, since at least 2015 with the launch of Windows 10. So exciting stuff ahead for Windows. What was that?
The creators update.
Yeah, creators update 2. We're back.
Yeah, remember when they were naming those updates for a while?
God, yeah.
But then we were joking back then. We're like, they can't keep doing this with the naming because
no, because they went anniversary update, then they went creators update, then they went full creators update. Hang on, no, this isn't how this works. You shouldn't be doing it like that. No, Microsoft.
I think it was okay because they were building out Windows 10 at that point. But we were joking at the time they can only do so much because it does become a point. Like we're just talking about it with Android 11 and Android 12. It's like, what feature do you really want? And most people will be like, I don't know. Because when an operating system becomes mostly complete, then it's just about nitpicking, which is kind of where we're at right now. People are still upset for some reason that one setting that they access every 6 months still has an old icon. It's like, yes, you're right, but who cares?
It is interesting that Microsoft chose not to talk about what's coming next for Windows at Ignite, but I think it sort of makes sense. Ignite is an IT Pro focused event where Windows is a part of that, but it's not the focus. That the Windows is the platform, but Ignite is very much all the stuff that sits on top of the platform.
And they didn't want to give the media too much to look at this, look at that, look at this.
Yeah, right. There was a lot here for media to break down.
There was a lot here already. Yeah. Where I think anything they're going to talk about with next Windows, they're going to want to have their own events.
Yeah, I think so
where
too.
we could singularly focus on what's being told there. They can have our attention. Go into much more detail.
Yeah, especially if Panos is leading the thing, because you know what Panos wants if he's leading Windows, he wants the spotlight to be on Windows. He doesn't want it to be sharing an announcement with something else, which at this case would have been.
He's going to do the thing on stage. He's going to show a video. You're going to see the start menu pop up, and then it's going to go one more thing. And the start menu then separates.
It just floats. Yeah,
it's a Surface Book.
Yeah, he's like, listen, we're doing something with software that's never been done with software before.
Wait, can you roll back that footage? We forgot one thing, and then the start menu separates. It'd be hilarious.
Wow.
They should just do that as an inside joke for the nerds.
That'd be really ridiculous. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. There will be a Windows event. I think it's already rumored at this point that there was going to be a dedicated Windows event at some point this year. And that's likely where they will talk about the next generation of Windows, which I assume includes Sun Valley and Windows 10X.
Yep. Let's move on quickly because we are getting a little bit long here into time. Go through some quick stories. Lumia photo lead joins Microsoft. So this is kind of a long story short. So, Nokia was a company. They made phones, and we all liked them. And then Microsoft bought them, and that was basically the end of Nokia as we know it, and also the downfall of Windows Phone in a lot of ways. I have to keep reminding people the fact that people just didn't buy Windows Phone, which is the real reason why they ended it. But, Ari Partanen, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, probably not, was one of their lead engineers. He wasn't the only one. Now I'm forgetting the other. Geez, I'm so bad with names. But there were a lot of people who worked on the Lumia camera system, including the Lumia 1020's famous algorithms for how it worked. And that wasn't him necessarily. But this guy was a pretty big person. He eventually left after Microsoft acquired them. He went to go work for Apple as a senior manager working on camera validation and testing. He was in that role for 3 years before moving to AAC Technologies, which I'm not too familiar with. And now he's back with Microsoft, specifically with the Surface team, obviously, because all hardware is technically underneath the Surface team these days. So that kind of makes sense. I'm delighted to announce, he says, I'm joining the Microsoft Surface team in a role of director of imaging. Even during these difficult times with the ongoing global pandemic, I couldn't be more excited about the future. And, everybody focused on Surface Duo immediately because that's the big, the camera's terrible on it. And listen, I absolutely think he'll be working on the Duo and Well, maybe version 2. Version 2's hardware, I think, is pretty advanced right now in terms of development. he can help with some software, maybe some last minute changes, but really this is more about version 3 and thereafter. So obviously he's worked in smartphones, he's worked in imaging. That seems like the obvious connection, but let's not forget that the Surface team puts cameras in a lot of its devices. In fact, all of them. In fact, they put multiple cameras in their devices, like the Pro and the Pro X and the Go and all this. And I've always said, and I'll continue to say, if you're looking for the best webcam on a laptop, it's going to be go with the Surface devices. And specifically, the Pro X has the sharpest imaging I've seen. But they are on a level already way higher than what anybody else is doing. The only competitor that may happen, and we haven't seen it yet, is coming out, is HP's, if I can get the name right, Elite Fire. Oh man, I'm forgetting its name already. But they're doing a Max version. It's the blue. Oh, Dragonfly. It's the Dragonfly. It's a blue Dragonfly. The Elite Dragonfly Max, which is not a bigger version of the Dragonfly. It's still like a 13-inch laptop, but they're putting I believe a 5-megapixel front-facing camera in it, which it's going to be very similar, I think, to the Surface Pro. HP and Microsoft work closely together on this, but you're going to start to see, obviously with the pandemic, there's been a refocus on making good webcams, something that Apple is still surprisingly terrible at. They don't do very good cameras at all on their laptops. So I think, this guy's going to be, they also make that 4K camera for Surface Hub. This is also a very important camera, right? So it's not just Duo, right? But he will, I'm sure, be helping out there a lot. But they have a lot of other products already that make much more money than Duo, or who are already very successful, that he's going to be helping out with. So, but this is all good news, obviously, for a Surface line.
I assume you could even work on the cameras in HoloLens 3. Because
Sure,
there's a whole bunch of cameras in that device that are quite important to the experience. So yeah, I think it's good. He's obviously working on multiple things, but I'm sure the Duo will benefit. But as will all of Microsoft's hardware that have cameras.
Yeah. So, we do think Surface Duo version 2's camera, possibly cameras, will be much better than what we have now. But
that's the hope.
but there's still I don't. This isn't going to be iPhone or Samsung level quality or OnePlus. They're about to announce their Hasselblad partnership. It's still not going to be that level, I don't think. I think it'll be an improvement. Yeah. But I wrote this last year, I think it was, saying that the version 3 of this device is going to be the real one to watch for. Version 2, I think, is going to be, to recap what we said before, the version we have right now was old hardware design that was initially conceived as a portable Windows Surface. Yes. That was its role. They scrapped that idea. We're going to scrap the hardware. Someone had the idea of let's put Android in it and turn it into a phone. And that's what we have. And that's why it's not very phone-ish. And that's why it's not a very good phone camera, because that's wasn't its original intention. It was meant to be a portable, pocketable Surface. Now that they're going to do version 2, they can now build that one up, knowing in their heads that this is an Android phone. What does that mean? And I think that's what they'll answer, what we're expecting this fall, including things like NFC, modern processor, improved camera. But they still need more lead time to make that even better, right? So stick a pin in this. It'll be very interesting. Yeah. Alexa app for Xbox. Real quickly, that's kind of the story. Spotted on the store. If you're an Alexa fan, you can go download it right now, but it's not currently working, but it should be soon. In fact, they updated and said it's coming soon. So you'll be able to use this as a smart assistant on your TV. And, there's still the issue of microphones. I still wish the Microsoft team would put a microphone into a remote control. I don't know. Seems like it would make this way more useful. I still wish that they, I know it's a gaming system, but imagine a remote with a microphone in it and some kind of AI built into it. So I can be like, Xbox, launch YouTube TV, and boop, it launches YouTube TV, or, put on Fox on YouTube TV. I feel like that component is still missing. I don't think this solves it, but hey, you could probably turn your lights on and off from your TV if that's your style. It's not mine, Plus, I don't have a microphone. I don't know how I'm supposed to use this, but maybe Microsoft will someday figure that one out. Let's talk about GroupMe really quickly. If you don't know what GroupMe is, GroupMe was an app that came out in 2010, I want to say, and it got a lot of funding early on. It was a messaging app on iOS and Android and came to Windows Phone through Nokia, I believe. Then they got bought by Skype, which was kind of interesting. And then Microsoft, like literally a couple months later, I think it was like 3 months later, bought Skype. So they indirectly bought GroupMe because of that. Like that deal was still going through, I think, when that deal with Skype happened. And ever since then, Microsoft's technically owned GroupMe. Now, GroupMe, I know a lot of people in Europe and, listening to other, around the world. It's a messaging app. It's a really good messaging app. It's very, it has its own design language. It has its own personality. We used to use it extensively as our behind the scenes chat. I use it with my friends and family too. It's kind of adorable. It has very cute emoji things in it. They kind of pioneered the heart like thing. So when someone makes a comment, you could just like it, which was so much nicer. When we switched to Telegram, this is the biggest missing feature. I'm surprised Telegram still hasn't made it, because basically if someone says something funny, you basically now have to physically reply to them like, LOL, that was hilarious. When you could just give them a heart and be like, there, I saw it, I liked it, it was funny, I enjoyed it. Well, that's GroupMe's thing. They also allow you now to change those. Did you know that, Zach? You can change those?
I didn't. I haven't used GroupMe since we moved to Telegram.
I know. They've been adding features.
The worst thing about it is that for ages, when we used GroupMe for years, I want to say 2 years, maybe 3 years, they had a nice UWP app, and it did get updated. It eventually got, I think, Fluent Design or some Fluent Design elements.
It did.
It was a nice UWP app, but the one thing it never had was a dark mode. And then we left the platform, and guess what they added?
Dark mode. Yeah. They finally did. It took them a very long time. It's true. But it's a beautiful looking app, and it runs very well. But the secret to GroupMe is this. And this is weird, but it's used heavily on U.S. college campuses. Yeah. And I know that's weird, and you may not want to believe me, but go on Twitter, just type in #GroupMe, and you're going to see a lot of discussions. And the reason is, and this reason is kind of waning a bit probably too, but GroupMe was initially, as I mentioned, iOS, Android, Windows Phone. It's also available on Windows. It's also available on the web. You could just log in and use it there. But it was also used just via SMS. Yeah. So there was a time when people didn't have smartphones in 2014 even, and 2015 and 2013, and you could still participate in these group chats just via SMS, which is really nice, and it's one of the distinguishing features of it. But for some reason, it is still used on colleges for classrooms, for people to collaborate on group projects and all this kind of stuff. And it's just been kind of coasting along. Now, as Zach mentioned, we used it for years, and we're like, this is awesome. Like, why doesn't Microsoft, one, promote this, two, add features, and really kind of build it out to be a thing? And I think because it was owned by Skype, and
it got lost.
I think they were like, no, we're going to make Skype the thing. And they did. Remember all the experiments they did with Skype, with trying to make it a personal messenger and all this. They tried to make it like with stories, and like they really tried to make Skype be that thing, be that cool guy in the room, and it just never was. And then they focused heavily on Teams, because Teams was their, productivity work thing. And then we're like, well, you should make Teams for consumers, and they did. And how many of you use Teams for consumers? I don't know. We kind of tried it, and it's just like, if you're looking just for a messaging app, it's a little overkill, it feels.
Yeah. Also, I don't like the name of it. It shouldn't be called Teams if it's for personal, just friends chat. That's ridiculous. Yeah. It's a terrible name for the service.
But I think it definitely serves a different market. I can see for our family using it because you can have a shared calendar and all this kind of stuff. But it seems like someone finally listened to our podcast from like 3 years ago and like, you know what?
We should update GroupMe.
Why don't we invest in GroupMe? Because one, and I want to shout out to the GroupMe team. You guys are awesome developers. And
who are the GroupMe team? I wish they'd come forward.
They're a small team from what I remember, based out of New York.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's still the case, if they've been transported to home base. But that's from what I understood. But they make it's a delightful app, is what I'm trying to say. It's really nice to use. That's the long wind up to what is this story. So I was using it over the weekend, and I got an offer for, hey, could you take this survey? And it's like,
they were like, we see you're the only person still using GroupMe. Can you take a survey?
Right. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to participate in this. And so I took the survey and it's like, oh, this is interesting. I started screenshotting it. So the first question they asked was basically, who are you? And like, why do you use
Why aren't you using Skype?
Right. It's like, do I use it for a church group? I use it for classrooms. I use it for coaching a little league team. It was friends and family. I said, yeah, they gave you like, I think it was like 9 choices. It was a bunch of choices. So, so they're trying to figure out who their demographic is, which is definitely important. But then they started like asking questions like, like, how would you like this feature? And one of them was like voice calls. And it was like, I expect it. I don't mind it, or like I would never use it. Like it was like that's how the responses were framed, which is really interesting. Sorry, my voice is going here. And so it was. It's really good. Jeez.
Wow.
Hold on, let me get some water here.
I can't even add to this because I didn't take the survey, so I have no idea what the questions were.
Well, I put a couple of the screenshots up, but
yeah.
So they voice calls. There's also video calls,
right?
Which is super interesting. Integration with your calendar, which is kind of, and it was again like, I like it, I expect it, I don't mind it. Were the responses to this. Then there was also Google Docs integration, which again that ties into I think the school thing. I think a lot of schools use Google Docs, and so those features all sound like, oh, they're going to make it like Telegram and WhatsApp, and because that's what those systems are very good at. Like we were saying, add voice and video chat to GroupMe for a long time. It was just like, you own Skype. It's literally part of Skype. Why don't you just build Skype into it? They kind of compromise by, you can create a Skype meeting now within GroupMe, and it generates a link, and it puts it into the chat. Everybody can click that link and jump into a Skype call. And you don't need to have a Skype account to use it. That's part of the whole now.
I think you do need you do need the Skype app if you're on mobile. On desktop, it will take you to the browser. So it's not all integrated into GroupMe.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was kind of a neat compromise. But it was like, why don't you just build in voice and video chat? So it sounds like they're looking to actually do that, and they're gauging how much people want that feature, how much I know a lot of these I put I expect, right? Integration with my calendar would be, yeah, that's really nice. The idea of like being in a group chat with people and be like, hey, pin a date in there, and we just all add it to our calendar. It's like, duh. And adding voice. Oh, and also there were another one. It was for an app called GroupMe. There are no publicly searchable groups. Yes. You can actually do it now on colleges where you can log in with your college email, and then it will find college groups based on your school. And it's this Campus Connect thing, which is actually really kind of cool. But there's no, like if you look at Telegram right now and Signal, they have ways to search for groups based on interests and stuff like that. And you can just join the group. So they asked about that feature too. And they asked also about like, how do you want to be presented with groups? Do you want us to like base it on like, things you're interested in? Or would you find that intrusive and annoying basically? So if they go with the public group thing, that's interesting because that's going to require a substantial investment because they're not just going to create public groups. You need to moderate those groups, which is, if you've been following the politics of the United States right now with Signal and Telegram and, extremism going on in our politics, using these services for that, this concept of platform moderation has become much more important. So it really does sound like they're getting a potential that Microsoft's pivoting here with some money and capital to invest into GroupMe, which, dude, it's 2 years too late in a lot of ways, but they do have users, and why not? It already ties into your Microsoft account, right? It's a great app. I would love to start using GroupMe again, even over Telegram, just to get the like feature back. And also the cute little emojis. They have these little blue emojis that are just really adorable. But pin in that, and hopefully we'll come back to it pretty soon. But that's GroupMe. Go download it. It's free. It's kind of fun. I know there's a problem with these apps. If you don't know anyone on it, it's like you have to convince people to switch. Always a challenge. Real quickly, you want to talk about the Xbox achievements?
Yeah, sure. So Jez Corden, our Xbox editor this week, wrote a sort of editorial talking about the current state of Xbox achievements and the achievement system. And he thinks, and I kind of agree, that the Xbox achievement system is due for an upgrade. It's been the same. It's basically for a while now. They recently, I say recently, maybe in the last year or so, added rare/unique achievements, which have a different sound and are essentially based on how many people have earned that achievement in a video game. So you get your standard achievement, which is, if a lot of people unlock that achievement, it's a standard achievement. Then you have these diamond achievements, which are rare achievements that only a certain percentage of the gaming population who have played the game have actually unlocked. And although they're not worth more usually, if it's 10 gamer score, it's 10 gamer score. You do get a special sound, and I think it sort of lights up on your profile as well. But that's the only real new thing they've added to achievements in recent memory. Otherwise, they've been the same since the Xbox 360 day. Achievement pops, you get 10 gamer score or 20 gamer score or 50 gamer score. The higher the gamer score, usually the harder the achievement to get, although that's not always the case. Now Microsoft were rumored to be working on a career system for the Xbox achievement system, I guess, which would have essentially added a rank to the amount of gamer score you have. Just like, say, you play Call of Duty, you shoot someone, you get 100 XP for it. Eventually, that XP adds up to a rank, and then the more XP you get, the higher the rank you climb, etc., etc. I assume that's what Microsoft are working on for achievements. That you get an achievement, 10 gamer score. That gamer score eventually adds up to 100 gamer score. 100 gamer score, you reach rank 1, and then so on and so forth. And then you can be like a rank 150 with 20,000 gamer score or whatever. That was something they were rumored to be working on, but then Microsoft sort of came out and said, actually, it was an idea, but then we've sort of cancelled it. And I really think that a career system of sorts, or a ranking system when it comes to gamer score, would really freshen up the achievement system. Because I used to be an achievement hunter myself. I used to love collecting achievements. Back in the Halo day, like Halo on Xbox 360 days, I completed Halo 3's achievements, Halo Reach's achievements. I went and did that. These days, I'm less inclined. I'm not too bothered about achievements anymore. I get, maybe it's an age thing. It could be an age thing.
An age thing.
Yeah. But I do think a career system of some sort would entice me to actually pay attention to gamer score again, because I think it would, I would look at my rank and I think, my rank's not high enough, I need more achievements. Because that's just the kind of person I am. But yeah, it hasn't been updated in a while, and Microsoft should really think about doing something along those lines. Like back in the day, when Microsoft were rumored to be working on an Xbox wearable, there were these ideas that Microsoft could apply real life achievements. So you do 10,000 steps in a day, you get a 10 gamer score. That would be so cool. That's what the
Microsoft fans. That's where it came out of.
Yeah, I know. I would walk 10,000 steps every day if I could get 10 gamer score for it.
They did miss an opportunity there. I remember they initially broke out Band. So yeah, for those curious, Band was a Microsoft Xbox side project.
Yes, I have the original prototype.
It was supposed to be part of the Connect and Exercise initiative and all that kind of stuff. And then they broke it out as its own non-Xbox branded thing because they wanted to hit a wider consumer market. But yeah, it does seem like there was it can go either way. It's not like it worked out by doing what they did, but I could see the rationalization for that. But yeah, it would have been kind of cool to have something.
But it's just prototype. Yeah, so this was the Xbox wearable. It was codenamed the Duel, and it would have linked up to Microsoft's fitness, Xbox fitness thing, I think. I can't remember what it was called now. But it was a chunky thing. It never shipped, obviously. These are early prototypes. But yeah, Dan's right. A lot of this tech eventually ended up in the Band and sort of disconnected itself from the Xbox brand. And unfortunately, none of that ever came back. Maybe there was a plan for the Xbox integration to return at one point, but it didn't happen. And I assume that didn't happen because, one, when the Xbox One launched, it launched quite poorly because gamers sort of rejected its vision of being an all-in-one entertainment hub. Gamers wanted a gaming console. They didn't want a gaming console that also happens to run apps and can do TV and fitness and all that stuff. So I think the team working on this were like, we might want to hold off.
Xbox gamers didn't want to exercise.
That's the other thing. Yeah, gamers do not want to exercise. They want to sit down and they want to play games. That's all they want to do. So yeah, I think the team who were building this got dissuaded to continue, and then all the work they put into it was eventually moved on to the Band team, who then released the Band, and the rest is history.
Yeah, so, we'll see what happens there. I agree with some of that. I don't follow achievements anymore. I don't care. As I said, I think it's definitely an age thing.
There's people in our comments upset at my comment that I would love it if I could get achievements for walking around. But no, it's called gamer score. Oh, I'm sorry.
Whatever. They
You're
could have
right.
called
It's
it
called
Health
gamer
Score.
score. I guess me as a gamer, I'm not allowed to walk around.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is things like Fitbit and even like a lot of these
Yeah.
wearables now have their own achievements, so it's not like a foreign
Oh,
concept.
absolutely
It is
not.
a
And if the term gamer score is the reason why they couldn't add walking to gamer score, change the name to
health score or
health
something.
to score.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't have to be gamer score. Jesus.
We got to get through these. I only got about 10 minutes left here, which is going to be hilarious. Um, Razer Anzu smart glasses were announced last night. These are $199, which is $50 less than the Amazon Echo glasses. What's cool about them, they come in two different styles, square or round, two different sizes, a small, medium, and then a large, which is kind of nice. Again, the Amazon ones always come in one style, one size. They do have different colors. There's three colors, but you're stuck with them. Uh, What's neat about the Razer ones too is the glasses are reduced blue light by 35%. So these are meant to be worn in front of the computer. And if you think that's weird, I've been using Gunnar optics for a decade. So there have been a whole category of gamer glasses out there that are kind of like yellow and tinted and basically ease eye strain. So this is not a new category, but they're sort of taking it to a new level. But they're not really aiming this at gamers. It's more for professionals like myself who are in front of a computer all day. So you get the clear lenses, 35% blue reduction. They also include in the box polarized sunglass lenses. So you can pop the other ones out and pop these in, and now they're sunglasses, which again, the Amazon ones don't do. You can also, of course, get prescription lenses put in there, either through your local optician or they made a deal with a company. They'll give you a discount through online. You can do it that way. The other thing is they have, of course, Bluetooth and speakers built in. So they're speakers over the ear stems. It's an open ear concept, meaning nothing jams in your ear. And the idea here is like if you're in a Microsoft Teams meeting in front of your computer all day, you can be wearing these, route the audio through them, and you'll hear the audio. It's like wearing headphones, but it's also not. It's going to be a lot more natural since you're just going to hear the audio. It's sort of like speakers, but better, so it's a lot more personable. And I actually really like that idea. Of course, you can also connect up to your smartphones. It can connect up to 5 devices, but you'll have to sort of break the connection between them. But you can do up to 5 devices: iOS, Android, Windows, whatever. So then you can use it for streaming music if you want to. You can use it with a voice assistant of your choice on whatever platform you're using. There are touch controls on each side of the glasses, so you can play pause music, you can bring up the virtual assistant, you can turn them on and off, so there's a bunch of options there. They did some clever engineering here. So there are 2 charging ports, one on each ear stem, versus on like the Amazons, there's a single charge port. And the reason they did that is because they didn't want to run the wires through the stems to the base of the glasses, through the glasses to each side, which is what you would have to do with a single connection. And the reason they didn't want to do that is because I believe on the Amazon ones, when you open them, they just open like to 90-degree angles, and you got to hope they kind of fit. But if you have real glasses, sunglasses or eyeglasses, they can flex outwards. So if you have a big head, they can kind of like adjust to your skull better, right? The design that Razer used here with that dual charger system allows them not to have wires running through that component, which then means these bars can bend out, which is kind of cool. So they should fit and be a lot more comfortable. We'll have to wait and see. But this idea of a wearable tech, you can, and for instance, you can ride your bike with these, have the sunglasses in, open ear so you can hear like directions from Google Maps or listen to music, but also still hear stuff around you. You can also just control them by tapping, and you can configure those however you want through the software. Like, I think this idea of wearable tech is really neat. Or yeah, if I'm in front of the computer all day and I'm just wearing these, it's going to give me eye protection with the blue light stuff for fatigue, but I can also take a call quickly and have that with me. I like that idea. Now, it's not augmented reality. We're not there yet, as Google proved years ago. But this is that first step towards that. And I saw in the comments really kind of annoyed me. They're like, they just copied Amazon Echo's glasses. And it's like, I hate to break it to you, but I think you're going to see a lot of companies make stuff like this. I think this is the new fitness wearable, right? We saw every company do that. And after that, every company in the world decided to make wireless earbuds, right? That became the new category. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of innovation around sort of smart glasses. And this is that step. I don't think it's copying because there's a lot of difference between the Razer and the Echoes. And listen, if you want the Echo ones with Amazon Alexa, go at it. You can order it today. These are available now. They're $200, like I said. I will be reviewing them. I'm waiting on a pair in the coming weeks. I'm very excited about them though, because I like this idea of functional tech that helped sort of like improve our lives. I wouldn't be shocked if Microsoft does something in this space down the road. They already did the earbuds, which has a similar productivity story to tell. I don't know, Zach, what do you think of these things?
I think they're cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really much else to say about them, really. They're not for me. I don't think I'll be buying them, but I'm sure there's an audience for these.
Yeah, I'm curious if I can pull off the look.
Yeah.
I notoriously, my best friend, he can wear any sunglasses in the world, and we joke around. It would be like at like a drugstore, and he'll go to that stupid rack with those $5 sunglasses, and he'll find kids' glasses and puts them on, and like,
and
I'm like, damn it, you look. Yeah, I'm like, damn it, look good, dude. Like, you can wear those. Meanwhile, like. I look terrible in about 90% of glasses. Right. I just don't have a face for glasses. I have a tiny head, I think. So I'm optimistic I might be able to pull these off, but we'll have to wait and see. But I will review them. I think it's really neat stuff. I think this is just the beginning. Yeah, I think obviously augmented reality glasses is really the end goal, but we're not there yet. Oh, I should mention they get 5 hours of battery life in terms of like real audio streaming. So that's actually long if you think about it. If you're probably not on 5 hours of calls per day. Yeah. If you are, I feel sorry for you. But you'll get over 5 hours with these. It's actually over 5 hours, it says. We'll see in the testing. It's more battery life than the Amazons too. But if you close them up and they're not being used, the battery life at standby is 2 weeks. You get the charger in the box, the case, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, go check out the article. It's called Razer and Zoo. I think they're cool, but we'll see. I'm going to review them. I'll tell you if they're cool, and I'll wear them on the podcast. When I get them, I'll be using them on the podcast instead of the earbuds. I'll wear these, and you guys can either make fun of me or not. And then real quickly, one last story. Microsoft is unifying the code bases of Edge's mobile apps. So this is interesting. Zach, do you want to kind of...
I can briefly sort of talk about from a top level. So for those who are unaware, Edge on mobile, which includes Android and iOS, isn't the same as Edge on desktop. Edge on desktop is Chromium based. Edge on mobile, I think is on Android it's Chromium based. I think on iOS it's WebKit because Apple requires it to be WebKit. But I think on mobile they're both Electron on iOS and Android, whereas on desktop it's not Electron, I don't think. Microsoft has announced, I think at a session at Ignite actually maybe, that they are planning to unify the code bases of Microsoft Edge across multiple operating systems. Right now, as I mentioned, Edge apps on mobile are based on different code bases than the desktop version. As a result of this, you see things like Edge on Android being based on version 77, while Edge on desktop is based on Edge 89. Microsoft aims to fix this and to improve the efficiency of Edge's development across platforms by unifying the code bases across them. They haven't said exactly which code base what they're going to use for the unification of these code bases. My assumption is it's going to be the Chromium stuff, and then they bring that to Android and iOS because Chrome on Android is actually much more performance than the Edge app on Android. Edge on Android is, as I said, I think it's an Electron-based app. Which is obviously not very good. And so them moving to Chromium would be a lot better because then they can actually, as Microsoft says here, align their code bases with the desktop version, but also take advantage of a better performance because an app that isn't Electron will just run better than an app that is Electron. So I think that's basically the gist of it. I don't think they go into too much information. I've not watched the video, so I don't know too much else, but that's basically, I think.
And the betas will be in the coming months and stuff like that, so It's going to be a little bit of a process, but yeah, it's I really appreciate the syncing of history right now between my devices.
Yeah, that's nice.
I use it all the time because I'm always jumping between laptops and phones.
I have noticed that so that you can now sync open tabs, which is cool. But you can't see your open tabs on other Edge desktop browsers on different devices. You can only see the open tabs on your phone, on the Edge app on mobile. I've noticed, unless I'm missing the UI on the desktop Edge.
I got to play with that. To be fair, I haven't really touched that too much, but yeah, I got to give that a shot because it all seems to be working now. I've been like noticing my history has been popping up. It's also been nice because I've noticed.
Oh no, I found it.
I
It's in the history UI. If you go to the history drop down, tab some other devices, shows up there.
Yeah, I've also noticed when I type into the Omni search bar on my desktop, a website I brought up on my phone comes up in the suggested. I'm pretty positive I experienced that today, which is really kind of cool. Yeah, so I don't know. It's good stuff. Yeah, Edge is a lot of momentum there. Actually, I was just thinking, going back to that Razer story, I want those Razer glasses, but I also want that Razer mask.
Yeah.
Put both on and just go out there like
Razer's really expanding their portfolio as of late.
Yeah, they're really branched out away from gaming. I mean, they're still doing gaming, but now they're going more to the productivity thing, which is smart. Right?
I mean, there's money to be made in productivity.
The Razer Book 13. I mean, don't take I give it a really stellar review, but since my review came out, PC Mag and a bunch of other outlets have reviewed it too. Go read what they said. The Verge reviewed it too and liked it a lot. So it's not just me. Razer is pretty good at doing this hardware stuff, so I'm actually kind of glad to see it. But yeah, the glasses in that smart mask that they built, like I'm just gonna go out there like some weird cyberpunk Bane.
Too bad all this stuff is shipping too late for the pandemic.
Yeah, I don't care. I can pull this look off. I'm telling you, I put on a cool jacket. People are gonna be like, that looks weird and strange, but damn, that guy's mysterious.
Mysterious, yeah.
Anyway, that's going to wrap up our podcast this week as I got to jet out a little bit early. Zach's going to stick around to take your questions, though, because, well, we'll see how long he sticks around, but it is Friday night for him. As always, though, you can listen to us usually Fridays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube Windows Central channel. You can also go back and watch our archives there of the videos, which is always kind of nice. I still have a bunch of laptop stuff I didn't get done this week. My Dell XPS desktop review will be out early next week, I swear, as well as a few other laptops and surprises that are coming out. Some big announcements, too, in the next 2 weeks for laptop stuff, which would be kind of fun. But follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, R-U-B as in boy, I-N-O, and follow Zach at ZACBOW. I'm losing my head right now. BOWDEN. Sorry, Zach. My brain went in 10 directions at once. As always, though, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.
Cool.
Ooh, exactly. 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, I got 1 hour, 20 and 8 seconds.
I know. I got 7 seconds, but I was just rounding. It was pretty close.
Okay, yeah. So, Dan, I think you're heading off now. I will hang around and answer any questions for 10 or so minutes.
Yes, you can field all the Sun Valley questions in the world now. Talk about icons.
I'm not allowed to talk about Sun Valley anymore.
Right, exactly. All right, not a problem. See you guys.
Bye. All right, let me quickly add my full screen view because I haven't done that yet. What do you mean there's no NDI streams? Yes, there is. Oh no, there isn't because Dan hung up. Okay, I've got to add my own camera. Hang on. That one. There we go. Now you can see me. Make that bigger. So yes, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. I'll be hanging around for a little while. Will the Photos UWP app be replaced with a PWA on Sun Valley and or 10X? I don't know the answer to that. I did hear that there was a new Photos app experience on the way, and it did use web elements, but that doesn't tell me much. So you'll have to wait and see about that. Zach, just tell us what all you know. We won't leak it. I cannot say anything else outside of what I've already said in the past, right now at least. So yeah, I can try and answer your questions, but if I can't, I won't. Earbuds 2 rumors. I don't have any Earbuds 2 rumors, unfortunately. There is a rumor that there might be a new set of headphones 3, announced in April. I don't know what's new with them, but that was what we sort of heard last week. So maybe. Would you recommend the Arc mouse? Because I haven't seen very good reviews, but I am tempted to buy it just because it looks so cool. It does look cool. It is a cool looking mouse, but the reviews probably said ergonomically it's terrible, and those reviews are right. From an ergonomic perspective, it's not very comfortable to use for a long period of time. So if you do buy one, keep that in mind. Like your hand will sort of feel cramped after an hour or so of use because there's no real way to grab it. But it does look cool. You're right. It looks great in product shots and whatnot. Is that a HoloLens 1 or 2 behind you? That is a HoloLens 1. I don't have a HoloLens 2, unfortunately. I'm not... Someone's asking why I'm so nervous. I'm not nervous. Do you think we'll see Sun Valley before Build? I don't think Build's been announced yet, but assuming Build is announced in May, I don't think we'll see it at Build. And that's all I can say on the matter, unfortunately. I actually, honestly, if I had to guess, I don't think there will be a Build this year. Or if there is one, it won't be until the fall or later in the second half of the year. Any news about Cloud PC? Nothing, unfortunately. Surprisingly, they didn't announce it at Ignite. I thought Cloud PC would be a great Ignite announcement, but they didn't. So my assumption is they're saving that for this rumored Windows event, which will be later in the spring. I use the Surface Precision Mouse. Arc is only good for temporary usage. That easily stows away. Yeah, I'm the same. I use the Surface Precision Mouse day to day. I like this mouse, although it does wear. It gets dirty eventually. But most Surface devices get dirty after prolonged use, unfortunately. Surface Mini come back with Windows 10X? I don't think so. And also my camera is out of focus, I've just noticed. Do you think we will see Sun Valley before Build? I do not. And do you think it will ship with new wallpapers? I assume it will have a new default wallpaper. I don't know that for a fact, though. Assuming that they are really trying to push this whole next generation new Windows thing, I would be surprised if it doesn't have a new wallpaper. Surface event in April. The last I heard, Microsoft were planning to ship the Surface Laptop 4 in April, and last week there was also a rumor that Headphones 3 were coming in April as well. So maybe not an event, but definitely an announcement of new hardware. Will there ever be a battery percentage icon in the system tray? I'm not sure. That might be something they're working on for Sun Valley. I've not heard anything specific. If it's something you want, add it to the feedback hub. Sorry if I missed it, but when is Duo V2 supposed to be released? We don't have an exact date for Duo 2, but the last I heard is that it was something that they wanted to do for the second half of this year, likely in the fall. But that can easily change, so don't take my word for it. Do we know why Xbox One S is sold out everywhere? Probably because they don't make the Xbox One S anymore. They want you to buy a Series S. And I know you can't find that either. But I don't think they manufacture the One S or the One X anymore. And I think they only manufacture the Series S and X. Excuse me, wow, hiccups. Well, Windows 10X suck. Well, it depends on who you are. If you're a gamer or somebody who needs Win32 programs, yes. If you're somebody who only uses a web browser and you do P apps, no. In fact, 10X will be quite the improvement. For a complete and better Surface Duo 2 experience, don't you think they should rework the Microsoft Photos app? Better integration between local and cloud storage. I agree. I've always said that I think it's a miss that the Duo doesn't have its own native apps for things like messaging, phone, gallery, etc., etc. Instead, it uses Google's apps, phone messages, Google Photos, and it's kind of lame because I don't want to sync with Google Photos, but the Photos app on Duo insists that I sync with the Google's cloud servers. I don't. Maybe they'll do it. I don't know. Will Home Group ever come back to Windows 10 to H2? I doubt it. Do you think Duo 2 will release this year? As I just said a few minutes ago, I've heard that they want to ship Duo 2 in the second half of this year, likely in the fall. That could easily change. I don't have a time machine, but that is the last I heard. That's what they wanted to do. Microsoft confirmed it will still manufacture Xbox One S. Then in that case, I don't know. When will Microsoft add Win32 app support on Windows 10X? So the rumor was it would be in the 2022 release of 10X. But I think the schedule has changed for 10X because it was supposed to be done in December gone, and it's not done yet. I believe they're still rolling builds for it, which suggests it won't launch until the second half of this year. Could it launch with Win32 programs at this point? Maybe. I've not heard anything. Honestly, I've not been digging for 10X stuff right now. I've sort of been focused on Sun Valley. It could launch Win32, but I'm going to doubt it. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's still going to launch without Win32. And I will say Win32 will be part of the picture in 2022. Windows 10 X's first release was supposed to be Iron. Did that change now? Did they skip Iron as the first release and move to Cobalt? So it's a good question. The answer, truthfully, I don't know the full answer. However, I can make an educated guess. The answer is it will still ship with Iron, but it will ship in the second half of this year as 21H2, even though it's based on Iron, because that's what Windows Server is doing. Windows Server 2022 is an Iron release. It's based on the Iron code base, but it's shipping as a H2 release, which is confusing because Sun Valley is Cobalt, and that will be 21H2 as well. So the Windows releases this year, when it comes across server, desktop, and I guess 10X, will be misaligned considerably. But to the consumer, it doesn't matter because these are all vastly different products anyway, so it won't really matter. The only people it will matter to is people like us who care about that sort of thing. But I have a feeling that 10X will launch with Iron. It could launch with Cobalt, thinking about it, because I know
I can't get to the internet right now. Check your connection or try
Thank you.
again in a little bit.
I know from self-hosting, I think 10X has moved on to Cobalt, but I honestly, basically the answer is I don't know for sure, but my guess is it will still be Iron in the second half of this year. Any chance for Studio 3 or Studio Monitor? I have no idea. That's been the rumor for a long time. Maybe we'll see it later this year. I don't know. On a scale from 1 to 10, what do you rate the tablet experience on 10X so far? About a 7. If the existing version of Windows 10's tablet experience is a 3, then yes, I'd say 10X is a 7. It's not perfect. There's still room for improvement, but it's definitely better on 10X. Will Microsoft fully replace CMD with PowerShell? I don't know. What's Iron and Cobalt? So Microsoft, when they develop Windows, they have...
I can't get to the
Oh,
internet
right.
now. Check your connection
I
or
was trying
try
to mute
again
it.
in a little bit.
There we go. Hopefully it won't talk to me no more. Iron and Cobalt. So when Microsoft develops Windows, they develop it on a semester-based cycle, 6 months, 2 times a year. So from January to June, July to December. These semesters have code names, and the code names are based on the periodic table. So Iron and Cobalt are elements of the periodic table. Right now we're in the Cobalt development semester. So that's from January to June 2021. Then after that we move on to Nickel, which is July to December 2021. Iron was the development semester from July to December 2020. So when we refer to Iron, we're referring to the work, the development of Windows that happened between July and December 2020. When we say Cobalt, we're referring to the work happening between January and June 2021. Will the shimmed Office be available on 10X day one? Office is not being shimmed on 10X. It's Edge only. Office will have to run in either the container or via streaming or via the web. Or using the UWP apps, which I guess will probably eventually be transformed into web apps anyway. When is the new RTM timeline for Iron? I don't know, honestly. If I had to guess, again, this is an educated guess, I think it could have RTM around the same time as Cobalt, which is weird. But if they're both, if H2 is the second half of the year, Cobalt's launching in the second half of the year, why can't Iron if it's being finalized at the same time as Cobalt? Who knows? When do you think we'll see a Surface Buds version 2? I don't know. I would like to see them in April alongside the Headphones 3, but I've not heard anything. The only thing, what I really want them to add is wireless charging. That's what I really want more than anything else. What happened to the UWP Calendar beta? They killed that because they're planning to replace Mail and Calendar with the Outlook web app in 2022. What do you think about the new icons in the dev channel? I think it's just the start of the overhauled UI. Updating icons is obviously part of that, but we're going to see a lot more, I think, with Sun Valley. What do you think of Office on Samsung Smart TV? I didn't know that was a thing. I missed that announcement. When did Microsoft start nicknaming Windows release semesters based on the periodic table? I think it's something they've done for a long while now. I can't remember when they started. Maybe 2018, 2017. But it's Azure. It's Azure's thing. Because Windows' development is based on the Azure semesters. And I think they borrow those code names from Azure. But the actual releases are codenamed 20H1, 20H2, 21H1, 21H2, etc., etc. Will the cloud apps be available for both 10 and 10X? I assume so. If it's a cloud service, there's no reason why it wouldn't be available on desktop as well as 10X. All right, a couple more questions, then I do have to head off. So please get them in, if you can. Wireless charging. Yeah, I would. Duo 2 for me, all it needs is a better camera, wireless charging, and NFC. Everything else for me can stay the same. I don't mind the bezels. I think they're fine. The thinness is great. Just wireless charging, NFC, maybe 5G. No, I don't care about 5G. But I know spec heads would be upset if it didn't have 5G, so I guess maybe I should have 5G just to keep the media happy. But if I was making the Duo 2, I would have just keep it the same. Maybe Actually, I'll tell you what I would do. I'd make the outside glass frosted so it doesn't hold fingerprints. I'd make a black version. I'd change the trim from plastic to metal because, my God, this plastic trim yellows over time. And then I would add NFC, wireless charging, and an external camera. Any news on the Surface Neo? Unfortunately not. I've not heard anything recent. Is that the OG Xbox One behind me? It's the OG Xbox. It's not the Xbox One. I assume you're referring to that. That is the original Xbox. It's not an Xbox One. And then next to it is an Xbox 360 Slim XDK. I have that because it has a gig of RAM and it runs games faster. And also it runs unside code, so I can run the Halo 3 betas on it and whatnot. I have all the Halo betas on it because... I don't know. I collect Halo betas. Why not? Did you get a chance to try xCloud in a browser? And if so, what is your impressions versus the native app? I didn't get to try, unfortunately. All right, I think it's time to head off. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next week, hopefully at the normal time of 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.